Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to the July 10th Land Use and Sustainability Committee meeting. We're joined by Commissioner Tanya Bott, Commissioner David Suarez, and I'm Alex Fernandez, the chair of the committee. I'm going to recognize our City Attorney, Nick Kalergis, to guide us through today's procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee will be conducted in a hybrid format, with members of the committee physically present in the commission chambers and staff and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. To participate virtually, the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 8505-9923-037, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 8505-9923-037. If you're wishing to speak on an item, you can click the raise hand icon in the Zoom app or dial *9 if you are participating by phone.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. We're also joined by our Planning Director, Tom Mooney. Do we have any additions, withdrawals, changes to today's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and read these. The following items are being deferred to a future date. Item number 5, regarding the requirements for property walls and fences. Item number 6, as it pertains to penalties and violations for construction, parking, and traffic management plans. Item number 7, regarding enhancements to development regulations in single-family districts. Item number 11, which is amending Section 211 regarding disclosure of certain settlement agreements. Item number 15, possible legislation increasing distance separation requirements for adult material stores. And item number 17, discuss uniform oversight and regulation of beachfront concessions.
All right, so with that, is there a motion to set the agenda with a deferral of 5, 6, 7, 11, 15, and 17, moved by Commissioner Suarez, second by Commissioner Bott, and we can show that adopted by acclamation. So we'll start with item number 1, Mr. Director.
Okay, item number 1 is to discuss the future programming of the West Lots.
Thank you, Commissioner Suarez. This is your item. You're welcome to introduce the item.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to put this discussion item on. I don't really have any sort of hardcore, definite idea for the West Lots. I wanted to hear from my colleagues what they had in mind. I think there was some discussion at neighborhoods about fair or a couple activations, but I think for the purpose of this discussion, I wanted to have something a little bit more long-term. John, I see you're up there. I don't know if you had something to chime in on, but it's more something to do with my colleagues and what they have in mind.
Sure, and I'll say that I think back with the old commission, there were some talks about making the West Lots almost an extension of the North Shore Open Space Park, extending recreational uses there. And I've been a long believer that whatever happens with the West Lots needs to be guided first and foremost by the residents of the area, guided by the needs of the community. And John and his team organized a community event in February of this year where some great feedback was received. And when we look at what the survey results that we received from that event, and I think we got almost 300 survey results.
276.
276. John, and guide us. What did the public say that they wanted to see in these lots?
Yeah, overwhelmingly, the top 4, and some I could combine with each other: green space, social space, event space. I could always almost make that one bucket because it could mean a lot of the same thing. Green space could be event space and public space. Parking is a concern. Want to make sure that there's still adequate parking for the parks and the neighborhood. And then as it related to specific recreation, They were about fitness equipment. Well,
What was that?
fitness equipment, like gym equipment, and coincidentally, we're working on creating a North Beach Muscle Beach. So
Okay,
that,
but I just wanted to go back for a second.
go ahead.
So the feedback that we got, what is it that the public told us that they wanted to see there?
green space, social space, event space, and parking are the top four.
Okay,
Is that in order?
Yes.
all right. Commissioner Bond.
John, when I went through the agenda, it seems like there might have been a typo, because one of the things that was one of the most highly rated does not fall within the top four on the memo, which is food and farmers markets, with 36 votes. Unless I'm reading it totally wrong.
I want to make sure I'm comparing my chart with what's in the memo in case there was a typo.
We see that Green Space had 84 results, or 84 votes.
Yes,
Parking had 68 votes. Social Space had 49 votes.
And then the next biggest was food
Was
and
food.
farmers markets with 36.
Correct.
Well, what did that, what
So
did
there's,
that,
the chart is right, there's a typo.
chart is right, but
There's
the
a typo in the memo.
Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't.
Yes, I have that food trucks, farmers market, 36 votes, event space, 17.
Okay.
Which again could be combined into events, food trucks. A lot of these are the kind of the same desires, just people were a little bit specific. Open space, green space, event space,
so green space was the highest.
yes.
So when I was at that event, in talking to the people, and it was a great turnout, Alex, you were there, and you and I commented on it. People really liked the flexibility that they offer now. So the idea of activating things in a way that is not a permanent built environment necessarily, or is minimally invasive in creating something that's built. So maybe a corner becomes a gym, or there's a track going around the perimeter of 3 or 4 lots, or, something like that. But I don't think anybody's super interested in making it built out, because that really limits the flexibility.
And I think, and to your point, I think there's a good medium to be found, because, we looked at the lots and we asked people about the lots. But I think we all were copied on an email about the side streets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those side streets also do offer great potential.
Yep.
Because in a way, we could, in essence, not vacate those streets, but close the right of way to traffic. And now use that surface space, whether it be for a recreational activity, we want to put in some sort of basketball courts or pickleball court or workout equipment. I don't know why I point to you, Commissioner Suarez, when I say
got
workout.
touched
For workout equipment, but we have opportunity to not only, preserve the green space that we have and preserve it as green space and social space and an event space. And we have the opportunity also to preserve the parking that we have there, but we also have the opportunity to potentially, Mr. Attorney, I don't know if we can do that, to close, right-of-ways with the intersecting streets and convert those intersecting streets into opportunities for recreational activity without taking away from the green space we have today.
And to build on that, there's possibly an opportunity to look at the 5 or 6 of the lots that are being minimally used and reconfigure them. So if we've got 2, they're being used as parking, but it's kind of not great, like maybe there's a way to put all the parking on one lot and use some of the additional streets so that we have more green space. I don't know what the answer is, but, if we look at it holistically and instead of saying, well, the parking's there and that's where the parking's going to stay, some of it is kind of not great looking. So maybe there's an opportunity if we just take a step back and say, out of these 8 parcels and these, 7 streets, I guess it would be, this is the amount of space we have that is not committed to the Kitty Campus and the rescue folks and the county. So how do we reconfigure that space in a minimally invasive way to maximize the output, preserving or possibly expanding parking, preserving and or expanding green space, then also possibly looking at some of the things that have been offered up. I also want to just mention to my colleagues, I went to check out the Coconut Grove Farmers Market, which came very highly recommended from a bunch of people after the Blue Zones meeting a couple weeks ago, and spoke to the owner of that farmers market, and he's interested enough to come take a look at the space because he likes the idea of having adjacent parking. But it's a long shot because it's, as he said, it's hard enough pulling together one farmers market in one location, so he's not sure he's got the wherewithal to do that. But I've also been talking to Todd English and his business partner, Rich Santalise, and talking about doing a farmer's market with other kinds of health and wellness activations with them. And we're at the very beginning stages. Cindy was on that call yesterday, at the very beginning stages, but they're super interested in doing something like that as well. So, and I know, there's no retail up in that corner. You have to go 5 or 6 blocks anywhere to, south or west to get any place where you can get something to eat or pick up some groceries. There is a tiny little farmer's market up in Surfside, but it's like
Small.
2 stalls maybe of food, and the rest is sort of handicrafts. So there's no real competition from that. So I think that could be, as a pilot program at least, a really interesting amenity that we provide, and then that becomes a community gathering space once a week with, who knows what else goes on there.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah, I think there's also been a lot of talk of a soccer field, right? Maybe a soccer field on one of the lots. I think that kind of combines social activities with green space, all in one. I know that soccer fields they're very hard to come by in Miami Beach, and there's long waiting periods, and especially the people of North Beach would love to have a soccer field there and not have to go to North Beach to use their soccer field. I don't know if there's an appetite with some of my colleagues for that. At least at the very minimum, I think some of our they're just naturally occurring green lots, perhaps put a fence around them so that people can bring their dogs or their children to play in maybe play catch. But right now it's just kind of open. It's not really usable, if you have your kids or your dogs, you're right next to Collins Avenue, and God forbid, you're playing, ball goes in the street, it's a problem. But that's sort of along the lines of what I'm thinking. Keep it green, but if it's going to just stay kind of how it is, at least let's put a fence around it and give it public access, obviously. And also I'd like to see with my colleagues if there's an appetite for a soccer field there.
Yeah, and seeing just from the feedback of the recreational activities that received the highest level of support from the public when the survey was taking place, soccer activity is amongst those. So I'm certainly open to that, and to the extent that we truly make this a community space that is safe for families, for kids, for people, even to protect people from, God forbid, an automobile or something. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of creating some sort of perimeter. A buffer. I mean, we have it also across the street at North Shore Open Space Park. We do have that buffer. You go to Flamingo Park, you have a fence around it. So it's consistent with what we do.
I really like the Parks Department to take a look with the Planning Department and see what we can do if we look at it in the aggregate from what is there now versus what could be there, inclusive of closing the roads to traffic, the side streets to traffic, or maybe leaving one in the middle open, whatever you, but come to us with a starting point of a proposal. And, let's find out if we can do a regulation soccer field. I mean, I think what we don't want to repeat, I agree that, soccer is a highly coveted use, but what we don't want to repeat is the mistake of building a soccer field like we have in Normandy Isle that's too small for regulation games, and so.
We cannot fit a regulation, we know that now.
We can't.
The width of the city block is
Even with the vacation of the right-of-way?
It would be the east, it would
It's
be
the
the
it's the
east-west
width of
width, that is
And what if
challenging.
you vacated in that block only maybe, or maybe all of them, the alley that goes behind the buildings between the park.
We'll definitely look at the options, but we
Okay.
did that exercise of a regulation soccer fields, a few years ago, and it would not fit.
And I just want us to be as inclusive as possible, because when I think of, like, right now, those lots, anyone can use those lots. The moment you create, you get green space and you create a soccer field. Well, now you are limiting that use
Yep.
to a very specific segment. If we're talking about areas like, like where we currently have asphalt, that we're getting new area now, that we could potentially close that right of way and incorporate it now as a recreational use, and that's new area. And so it's new area, so I'm more open-minded to what we could do, whether it be a fitness activity or whether it be, a racket sport facility or basketball courts or whatever it may be, in the new areas that we acquire. But in a minimum, the green space that we have, from the feedback we've received from the public, I feel we should maintain those areas as inclusive as we can, as green spaces, as accessible to as many people, so that if families want to go there and play catch, they have that space. Or, someone wants to go with their dog and play fetch with their dog, they have that space, and be more inclusive rather than exclusive. The only other thing I would say is that, when you look at the 8 lots, it kind of like makes sense. You have 80th Street that's between lot 1 and 2. See, can we, unify those two? You have 82nd Street between lots 3 and 4. Does it make sense to unify those two? You have 84th Street between lots 5 and 6. And you have 86th Street between lots 7 and 8. Acquiring that right of way so that you still have these cross streets. At 81st Street, you would still have a cross street. At 83rd Street, you would still have a cross street. And at 85th Street, you would still have a cross street.
Yeah, I don't even think you need that many. I mean, maybe have 2.
Maybe,
I
yeah.
would go down to 1, because, what we heard from residents too is that they don't love the fact that people are just circling and circling looking for parking. But if we can add some spaces and sort of reconfigure the lots a little bit and use some of the gained space to provide some additional parking, that would negate the need for people circling. And then once we have the parking lot on 72nd Street, I mean, I know it's a little bit of a walk, but it will have an additional 100 and how many spots?
100.
150, because we added the second level. So
150.
No, I think it's more than that, because we added the second level.
Oh, you're talking 72nd Street.
Yeah. So anyhow, but so there will be additional parking. So I would say, I would suggest not more than 2 streets be kept for traffic.
So, John, I don't know if you're getting good feedback from us. I don't know if you need additional feedback from the body.
If I could just repeat what I think I've heard, I'm going to work with Tom and whatever departments are involved to come back again
Yes.
with a fine-tuned concept of what we could do, focusing on open space, seeing what we could do from a soccer standpoint, but leaving space for things like food trucks, farmers markets, and things like that.
And really reimagining how they all fit together, and not letting where curbs currently exist or where gravel currently exists be the definition of what it can be. I mean, if we have 3 contiguous lots that are unencumbered, then great, let's make them really, beautiful and get rid of the gravel. And if we have 2 that are kind of some parking and some other thing, or half parking and half nothing, or where the log cabin used to be and nothing next to it on the other side, then maybe that's, where we think about concentrating the parking.
Absolutely.
This could be a great linear park
Yeah.
for North Beach, because in essence, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
And we're not trying to change it into
We're not.
something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I don't know how my colleagues feel, but some lots, maybe we just do nothing, keep it open and green, like 7 and 8, and just
Yeah.
put a fence around it.
I'm fine with
And that will draw a lot of attention and use to it, because it'll be a lot safer to bring your kids or your pets to the area.
Especially if we close off that street and make it one contiguous parcel.
We'll look at that too.
All right, and the only other thing I would also say, a number of these lots, we're looking at recreational activity, we're looking at parks activities. Clearly, they're zoned GU, but I think we need to look at them as facilities for park uses. And then some of them clearly are more parking lots. Others are more of a facilities. I think we need to see which are the lots that are going to be managed by the Parks Department.
Good point. Right now, of the 8, we have one, the Parks Department. We oversee
Skate park, right?
lot number 4,
You see the skate park?
the skate park.
The skate park. And so to your point, Commissioner Suarez, if lots number 7 and 8, we keep as green spaces for public use, should those, be managed by the Parks Department, or what other lots should be managed by the Parks Department? So like seeing, okay, which are the lots managed by facilities, because it's a former log cabin site and it's where we have,
Kitty campus.
The Kitty campus, and then which are the ones that are managed by the parking department, because we have parking assets there.
Gotcha.
But like, it makes sense to put where the Kitty campus is. Why wouldn't we take the other part of that and expand parking into there?
Yeah.
And then, then you have far less need for the other lots, whatever. Come back to us and show us what you have.
And Commissioner Suarez, and then I'm going to go to members of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. John, real quick, what is the price per linear foot of a fence?
Oh my gosh.
It's expensive.
I know, that's why I want to know if.
Tom, do you know off the top of your head? We'll find out for you.
And then Tom,
Chain link and state fencing, obviously, are very different prices, but we'll get you both.
Tom, you're our city planner. You have any ideas?
I think that the discussion here is good, and if the direction is to move in the area
I
of
don't
open
want.
space.
I want to know what you think.
From an urban planning perspective, what is the best use of
The
the
west
west
lots.
lots?
I mean, there's a lot that you can do with those west lots.
Pretend you're commissioner and you have an idea. What's that? Give me some
Actually, no,
idea.
don't pretend you're a commissioner, because then it gets politicized. Pretend you are the urban planner of the city, which you are. You don't have to even pretend that. You are the urban planner.
I mean, the way I've always looked at the west lots is, I've always looked at them as a strategic asset for the city. And when I say a strategic asset, they could potentially be more than just open space if there was the will for that. And the reason I say that is because we have a fairly large amount of park area directly across the street in North Shore, and we have park area directly to the south. And there may be a way to have more of a hybrid of uses that could serve the surrounding community. Because if you look at the Biscayne Beach and North Shore area, those are medium density, low density residential multifamily areas that don't really have any place to walk to in terms of entertainment uses, commercial uses, non-residential uses. And to the extent that the west lots in some way could fill that void in some way, there may be that opportunity.
And that conversation is why the west lots are today in the conditions that they're in, because whenever that conversation starts historically is where things, go south with the west lots.
Give me some idea. Give me some ideas, Tom. You said like more really high level. Give me like medium or low
Commercial
level.
uses.
So one of the things
I'm
that,
just curious, like
Yeah.
what kind of commercial use?
so the type of neighborhood commercial uses that would make sense are uses that would serve the greater neighborhood. And these could be things like smaller cafes. They could be things like small grocery stores, dry cleaners, personal service establishments such as salons, nail salons, things that people.
Don't we already have that on 72nd Street?
But 72nd Street is pretty far away. This would be uses like that are within walking distance of a fairly large community. And they could be integrated into something that could potentially have a more attainable or affordable residential component that could also begin to add bodies to the street and form a better connection across Harding Avenue, which, for better or for worse, is a little bit, I think, more transient than people would like, and could potentially form that bridge to the more truly non-transient residential areas that are west of Harding Avenue.
Got it. Thanks, Tom.
All right, so I'm going to open up to members of the public. Larry Schaefer, you have your hand raised. You're welcome to speak for 2 minutes.
Hello, Larry Schaefer, 233 First Street. I'm glad that you like the idea of closing some of the intersecting streets. I sent an email with an analysis of each street and the potential and what you would get from doing that and complexities related to each. Right now, the major park entrances at 81st, 85th, and 79th, you probably don't want to close those streets because they lead people right into the park. But if there's no park entrance, you might want to look at closing those streets. And it's a wonderful idea to combine these because then we get more parking and fewer streets there. I want to reach out and offer to meet with John Rebar and the rest of the staff to try to put together like an iteration of a plan. I've lived up here for 13 years, been thinking about these parcels for 13 years. I know what the neighbors want. I don't want to try to control the process of defining what goes there. I just want to offer the information that's already been generated by the community and get a short-term plan that we can do something now and then have a long-term plan for later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
I have one more comment. I'm sorry, Alex. May I have 30 more seconds?
Of course.
Okay. I also submitted an idea that will take some more analysis, but on the weekends, we are overwhelmed with visitors from outside of Miami Beach, we believe, that drive over the causeway and take up most of the parking. And they also take up the pavilions and the benches and the grills and everything in North Shore. I'm not sure that we need to have $1 an hour parking when maybe we could move to non-resident parking being $20 or something like what it would cost to charge to stay in a parking garage in South Beach. It would be better for visitors to drive north to Hallover, where it's $7 a day for parking, and then it's a county park with county maintenance and county dollars paying for all the cleanup from these parties and things, instead of having them all come here in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Larry.
Assets. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Omar Jimenez. I'm a North Beach resident. I'm here to speak on two items today, but this one is one that's been on a lot of North Beach residents' minds for a long, long time. It's had a lot of advocacy over the years, and I know that it's very, very important to a lot of the North Shore and more of the West Lots residents like Larry. Larry is a great example because he lives right there, so he has a lot of good things to say. I'm just going to say one thing. I'm not really sure about the fencing. I would just love to see that short-term or medium-term. Plant lots of trees there and make it like a nice shaded area for residents to hang out. As Mr. Mooney correctly said, there's a beautiful park right across the street where people can go and walk their dogs, and there's actually a lovely dog park there already. So I don't really see the need for fencing, and it's just going to block the view. It's just going to obstruct the view completely, and there's many other things that we can do there other than commercializing the West Lots. So thank you.
Thank you. And there's no proposal to commercialize the West Lots. To the contrary, the idea is to keep it for public recreational use.
Since our director of parking is here, can we have him give 2 seconds on what he thinks?
Sure. Mr. Parking Director, welcome to the Land Use Committee. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you, sir. Will McDonald, Director of Parking, City Miami Beach. So I will echo Mr. Schaefer's sentiments regarding the availability of parking, because we understand that we obviously want to make the city of Miami Beach already takes care of the residents here by offering the $1 an hour rate. So if we massage any rates throughout the entire city, it will only increase the availability for residents to be able to take advantage of those lots. On top of that, I think that if there is additional parking assets that we are going to deploy in that area, there are some great technologies for creating some parking lots that are porous surfaces instead of non-porous surfaces, because obviously being a barrier island, flooding is a problem, and anytime you take a porous surface like grass and you asphalt it or you concrete it, it's just going to exacerbate that flooding problem. So I think there are a lot of great new technologies out there regarding interlocking pavers that we can do that will increase the parking inventory, but not exacerbate the flooding problem that occurs here because of where we are.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, with that, John, you've received good feedback
Yes,
from
sir.
the committee today.
I did.
Obviously, we don't have a meeting in August, but will you be in a proper posture in September to come back and give us with some sort of vision?
Yes, sir.
An update? Perfect. So let's continue the item to September.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. All right, Mr. Director, let's call item number 2.
Okay, item number 2 is consider requiring the inclusion of bicycle rideshare stations as a condition of eligibility for currently proposed and future incentives for new development projects in the city of Miami Beach.
All right, this is an item I placed on the agenda to more formally incorporate these bike share options as part of our LDRs, and especially when we're offering incentives and doing other approvals for new development in the city. And so, Tom and Nick, if you want to walk us through the amendments that you all have drafted for us.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I can kick this off. What we have proposed are 2 separate amendments to different chapters of the Resiliency Code. The first is an amendment to Chapter 7, specifically Section 7.1.11 regarding residential use incentives. And as the committee members may recall, when this section was adopted by the commission last year, it set up a template for future residential use incentives that may be proposed. Recently, one such incentive was adopted for limited areas of the RM2 and RM3 areas of the city in order to promote non-transient residential uses. And there are 2 overlays pending before the Planning Board and the Commission for Washington Avenue and Lincoln Road. And each of these areas is subject to different regulations with regard to no short-term rentals, converting any existing lodging uses, recording a covenant for future short-term rentals if a certificate of appropriateness is required. And because these are incentives that people can voluntarily avail themselves of, this wouldn't be considered something, I believe, that's more restrictive. One of the proposals here would be to add a requirement for bicycle rideshare stations. So if somebody is taking advantage of the residential use incentives on a voluntary basis, they would provide bicycle rideshare stations, and it would be a minimum of 1 bicycle rideshare station that contains at least 15 bicycles per station for every 50 residential units provided. And this bicycle ride share station would have to be provided within the confines of the private property.
Open to the public for public use, or?
We can add that, open to the public and for public use.
I want to make sure of that because I think currently as drafted, the language doesn't clarify that. I want to make sure that if.
What exactly, excuse me, Mr. Chair, what exactly do you mean by ride share?
Ride share is like city bike. It's like they could do city bike, or they could do their own, some other, type of bike share program.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. So the private developer would have to get a sort of business agreement with either City Bike or on any other rideshare service?
Yeah.
And it has to be on their property?
Yes.
And open to the public.
Of course.
Yeah.
The next area that we had suggested an amendment to is Chapter 5 regarding off-street parking, and we would propose to amend Section 5.2.1, and these are the alternative parking incentives. And there are a number of incentives in this section that allow for a reduction in minimum off-street parking if one or more of these incentives are met. And one of the ones that we would add to this would be bicycle ride share stations. And this would also require a minimum of 1 bicycle ride share station with at least 15 bikes per station. And that could result in a reduction of 1 parking space for every bicycle ride share station that is provided, not to exceed 15% of the total number of parking spaces required. There would also be a requirement that these bicycle ride share stations be located within private property, and that the proximity of bike share programs located within public right-of-way or another property would not be counted toward that incentive. And we can add the language regarding open to and available to the general public as well.
Yes. Are there any comments, questions on the item before before us.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add that if there is consensus on this, we will bring it to the city commission for referral to the planning board.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions, comments?
I like the idea. I think we did something similar with Washington Avenue and Lincoln Road residential, although it's not a private company. The idea is to get people out of their cars and onto micromobile means of transport.
But more broadly, when people come seeking these types of approvals,
This is part of
it should be just the basic policy that, we want to advance the goals of micromobility, of alternative modes of transportation. So
I just want to caution, using, because if you're a property owner, and let's say City Bike doesn't do a good job of rotating their bikes, and it's on your property, and the residents there are upset. I'm just trying to think ahead on what the negative impacts would be by using a private company or forcing a private company to be on property, and seeing how we can probably, I guess, make sure that there's not going to be any problems when that does get implemented. So
I think it becomes a design aspect, right? Like, they understand who the vendors are. It would make sense to be a City Bike. It doesn't have to be, but that way their residents or guests can continue with other bike stations around the city. But they could design it, they design back-of-the-house operations, they design parking entrances, they landscape their front access. So I think they just have to take that into account and create a bay where they can put their one or two stations and, have access, but it's not the first thing you see. And it's just a design consideration.
I don't know who would, maybe parking, but are there any regulations on City Bike or rideshare stations that have to be met within a certain, like, for example, the ceiling? If there's a certain minimum height, then the development is going to have to.
So they have, Will McDonald, Director of Parking, Miami Beach. They have stations right now. Right now, there's not really a minimum height. The units are 5 or 6 feet tall right now, but I think that's just because that's the units that they currently have. So obviously,
and there's also visibility, because since they're placed on the public right-of-way for transportation, you need site angles. And so they don't tend to be bulky because you can't block the visibility.
correct, and they are generally porous because right now the racks are just sufficient enough to hold the front of the bike, and then the bike locks into the rack. And even if you have a fully loaded rack, while obviously it decreases visibility, it's not like having I'll say a 15, 12-foot high box truck parked in the same parking space. And so that's why transportation has worked with us and to ensure that even if we place them in certain areas, you still create a better sight line. And my thought process on these, since these would generally be on private property anyway, they wouldn't affect any, sight line visions when it comes to people making left or right turns.
Private property, but it doesn't mean that it has to be inside a private building.
Correct.
It's private property, but it's open to the exterior.
Correct. Yeah. My immediately when I think of this, I think of, I know we're looking at 5-foot and 10-foot walkways that are right of ways out in the on our city public areas, and so my thought process is these would just be ingrained into that design. Mm-hmm. So it is something that as you are arriving to the building on your micromobility device, whatever that device may be, it's easily parkable right on the exterior somewhere, whether that's side, back, front, wherever, planning, deems it acceptable that way, because it gets you to and from that building to wherever else you're going after the fact. But we could be, right now, the units are a specific dimension, but that dimension is really just designed by how many units they are designed to carry. So we have 15 racks, we have 30 bikes. So, depending on how much capacity we want at that location, really deems how much area we need.
Are there any City Bikes or rideshare stations on private property now that you know of?
Not under our contract, no.
And we were discussing this yesterday at neighborhoods because we were trying to identify, the city was trying to identify areas where they could add, especially in Mid-Beach, where you have a density of residents and a lot of hotels and all that. And the challenge is, finding right-of-way where you could do it, where the state is not involved, and it's challenging.
Yeah, it's the balance between, we obviously want to create more of these, so we make micromobility accessible, we make it convenient, because if it's convenient and accessible, people will use it more. But at the same time, if we take away 1, 2, 3 parking stalls to put this in there, then, obviously that creates a counter effect, even though we understand we are trying to get people off cars. That's a culture and a habit change.
We are, on that topic, we are talking about very preliminary stages of activating Indian Beach Park. And I don't know if that came up in the conversation yesterday at neighborhoods, but that might be a place to put it, which is not on the street side, but it's on the beach walk side, and might be a great place for Mid-Beach.
All right. Any other comments on this item? All right. Are there members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none in person and none in Zoom, can we show this item forwarded to the City Commission with a positive recommendation by acclamation?
Yep.
All right. With that, thank you, colleagues. Let's call items number 3 and item number 4 together.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and read both of them into the record. This is item number 3, which is to discuss the potential development and implementation of citywide regulations pertaining to commercial vehicle deliveries on private property. And item number 4, discuss holding companies doing business within city limits responsible for educating their drivers about the prohibition of blocking and double parking in the rights of way.
Commissioner Bont, these are your items. You're welcome to present your items.
Thank you. This has come out of just frustration citywide from residents and businesses alike about delivery vans and vehicles blocking the public right-of-way, especially at rush hour, but not exclusive of rush hour. And just there being no accountability. So we were talking about all kinds of different ideas about expanding delivery hours or constraining them or making them all deliver in one place or making them pull off. And, the fact that there doesn't seem to be any education. And so we basically asked the parking department that was under different management 2 times ago when this first conversation started happening unofficially to sort of put all that into the mixing bowl and see where we came out. So have at it, Will.
Okay, so Commissioner, do you mind if I start with number 4 first?
No,
because
go
it's the
for it.
much easier
Yep.
lift on this one. So right now, the parking department is currently piloting freight loading zones with a different color and different sign structure. We are seeing some extremely positive results preliminarily with individuals actually utilizing this. Less enforcement necessary because it does bring a little bit, it catches people's eyes. People aren't able to accidentally pay in certain areas. And so with number 4, my thought process is very easily, should we decide to move forward as a city with rebranding these zones, rebranding the way that our freight loading, our commercial loading zones are identified, are marked, are managed, then it would be very easy for us as a division to create a 30-minute to 1-hour video showing what these new zones are, how we can bring attention to these, and then as part of a company buying our freight loading or commercial loading zone permits or alley permits within the city, have them submit a letter of attestation stating that all of their drivers will watch this 30 to 1 hour minute video, and we can, get a roster of who they're going to allow to deliver in the city, and that is part of their permit. And so that way, everybody that comes to Miami Beach can understand what they need to be looking for when they're coming to the beach. We'll give a link because all of our freight loading and commercial loading zones are marked on a GIS map that we will be able to give them access to. And so we can very simply make it a part of, hey, if you buy a freight loading zone permit within the city of Miami Beach, all of your drivers that deliver here need to watch this 30-minute to 1 hour video, depending on, how we structure it, probably 30 minutes. Because
What do people do now?
they buy a permit.
And then they violate the permit.
And then they buy what?
and then they violate the permit.
And then they violate.
By parking in the middle of the streets, except now, I do have to tell you, William, and I really want to commend you, because as part of my, 1 year away from 40 initiative, I'm trying to get out there exercising every day again in the mornings. And I'm seeing some of the challenges that we would see on the 100 block of Lincoln Road. I'm seeing them ameliorated a little bit. I'm seeing the freight loading the trucks. They're using the purple zones that you created, and that wasn't the case before. Before they were just parking in the middle of the street.
Oh, they still are.
Well,
But
it's better.
it is better.
It's better. No, it really is
No,
better.
I know, we've been working on it for a long time.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, so I want to tell you, that purple initiative, designating the freight loading zones in purple, doing the signs in purple, and cross-referencing it, not only does it stand out because it's a different color, but now it's easy for the drivers to cross-reference those signs with the marking on the street. And I personally feel it, from what my experience of just seeing real life what's happening on the ground, I think it's making a difference. And I just want to commend you publicly for that, because in a very short time, you have taken something very serious on, and you're showing results.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner. And honestly, our numbers of citations and tows in the area are showing some pretty substantial results data-wise. And so I want to make it very clear to the Commission and to the public that we will always be driven by data. And so if we do something, there is absolutely something about going out and seeing it, and I'm glad that it is already being noticed. But from our end, we can just look at the number of citations that our officers have written and the number of parking lead tows that have come out of that area. And those numbers have decreased. It also helps because we have created in certain hotspots, we've created a different route. That is, we have a designated officer that goes over certain zones within that area. And so we have an officer that's going to be driving through there every 15 to 20 minutes. And so what that allows us to do, because we understand that that is a hot spot, and it's really a T shape there, and even farther than a T with some of our residents. But we're going to be able to be smarter in our approach, provide more education to the companies that are coming on the beach, provide more visual identifiers to individuals who may not be accustomed, because I think I've joked about it several times here on the podium, as well as in private conversations, that in the state of Florida, generally, a yellow curb means a fire lane, a yellow curb means a fire hydrant, a yellow curb means no parking, a yellow curb means commercial loading, a yellow curb means freight loading. And so what we're going to try to do is make it more visually apparent to individuals that aren't necessarily understanding of what Florida statutes are, of what the curb codes, the curb colors actually mean, to make it more apparent to say, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit more aware of what's going around.
And the other thing I just want to highlight is which I love, is that you've also programmed the mobile parking apps, so that if someone is trying to park in a freight loading zone in a time in which they're not permitted to park in the freight loading zone, now the app is telling them, hey, hold up, you can't park here, and we're not accepting their payment. In other words, we're not facilitating them breaking the law, which before, it was horrible. Like before, people were parking on the freight loading zones. We were taking their money for parking in the freight loading zones, and then we were towing them, which was horrible. And so now you're worked to fix that, which is great, because what that means is that now that area is available for the delivery truck.
And that goes back to the whole point of, they get the permit, then they violate the permit. It really goes back to ensuring that we keep those areas open, because on one hand, if we can come down really hard on anybody coming in and violating the rules for freight loading. But if we aren't giving them a real option, then we're doing a disservice to the businesses that they're delivering to, because we're saying, we don't know where you're supposed to park, but we don't really care. We're just going to bring a hammer. And that's not what we should be doing.
The one thing I would just say is, what I've noticed is that you've created the freight loading zones, designating them with the paint. but then you have signs. You have a sign here for mobile parking, and then 5, 10, 15 feet away, you have another sign with a freight loading zone. And what can we do to consolidate those signs in one pole?
So that's a challenge, and it's a challenge that not only faces Miami Beach, but I just came from a parking conference in June, and the city of Boston showed one of their signs, and there was probably about, not gonna exaggerate, 8 different signs that were probably 6 inches high that had arrows pointing to both directions and saying, from here, this is, this time to the left is this time to the right is this. One of the, and I know what you're talking about as far as we have here to pay, but then we have the freight loading on one side and the other side. We are going to try to be extremely strategic where it's not bait and switch, where we have some signage that obviously, hey, this is where it starts, this is where it ends, and then there's something in the middle that has maybe the double arrow. We're not going to be able to put a sign on every space. We could, but then it creates clutter on the right of way, and it creates some sign pollution.
Can we consolidate? Like, for example, like I'm thinking, like the 100 block of Lincoln Road. You have the pay sign, which is purple for the freight loading zone, but then probably 15, 20 feet ahead, you have the freight loading zone sign. And what would make sense is that right below that parking sign, you would have the freight loading zone information all in one pole.
And
why can't we do that?
We can. We absolutely can. Our biggest challenge is that with, from what I understand, the code in Miami Beach says that a sign can't be below 7 feet because of where it is on the pathways. And so therefore...
Is that only in Miami Beach, or is that a standard?
Well, I'm not going to pretend to speak on Miami-Dade. My apologies. I'm being told
It's a Miami-Dade code.
And so, therefore, our signs, for example, our freight loading zone signs are about 24 inches high. And so at the minimum height, that means that now puts the top of that at 9 feet high. And so then we would put our zone sign above that, and those zone signs are 3 feet high. And so now we have a zone sign that peaks out at 12 feet high. And if you are a 5 foot high individual, you are now looking 12 feet into the air.
I'd need a ladder.
And so we try to be cognizant of that. It is a fine balance, and I absolutely understand whenever I'm out on our curb space, I'm always trying to look at sight lines. And so, okay, if I park here, where can I look and identify whether or not I should be parking here? Now, the good news is, as you brought up, we've created the electronic zones so you can't activate your parking. And with one of our vendors, unfortunately, it is generic language that it just says we do not accept payment. But the other vendor is able to make a zone-specific alert for us. And that vendor has put freight loading zone tow away. And so therefore, if you try to pay with that vendor, if that does not make you perk up and go, I shouldn't be here, I mean, we can only do so much in that. We painted a different color, we put signage, we give you an electronic warning. After that,
You can't fix stupid.
I can't say that you can, Commissioner.
Going back to the initial conversation about this holding companies accountable, how do we measure whether or not they are doing that? What happens? Because I'm sure that's a job that has a fair amount of turnover at the driver level. So how do we verify that?
So for this one, this is really a multifaceted approach, and it kind of goes with I'm All In. The city manager recently released the I'm All In, one city, one team approach. So I reached out to our partners in the city attorney's office. I reached out to our partners over in code compliance, because what happens is in parking, we can enforce public right of way. When it comes to private property, we really have to go into code enforcement. We have to look at what ordinances can be written by the city attorney's office and enforced properly. And so when talking with them, we looked at a multi-tiered approach where at first we go to the business and we try to get an understanding and agreement where we're saying, hey, listen, this is what we really need from you. And so having an MOU there, not really enforceable, but an MOU in place to get compliance, I think that's going to be a great approach. Then after that, it's really understanding, can we change the hours of the loading zone? Now, in areas where there is a commercial and residential mix, that's going to be a bit of a challenge because obviously that's going to impact the quality of life from the residents. So we would take that on a case-by-case basis of where that business is located. Is it going to have an impact on any residential units that are within the area? If it's not, hey, we can have that conversation. If it is, at that point in time, then we move to our code partners in the city attorney's office to say, what can we do, whether it's writing an ordinance or putting something in the code that says in these hours, this is what we can enforce for deliveries on private property, et cetera.
But going back to the MOU,
Yes.
People get their freight parking permits annually? They have to renew them annually? Or is it for a 5-year term? Or?
It's either annually or semi-annually, so it's either 6 months or 12 months.
Okay, so at every 6 or 12 months when they have to come back to you, would they have to do a letter of attestation that all their drivers, their new drivers, anyone who's dropped off, their replacements have taken, how do you enforce that piece of it? Like, I hear what you're saying about looking at the freight loading zone timeframes and all that stuff. But in terms of making sure that the companies themselves are adhering to, Scout's honor kind of promise of.
So it really comes down, right now, and I'll kind of, if the ultimate destination of the delivery is on private property, that's where it gets a little bit more difficult from our aspect. If, for example, they are violating the right-of-way, then we can absolutely talk about what we can do about maybe withholding. For example, and I'll defer to our city attorney's office, but let's say we've issued a freight loading zone permit to a commercial company, and we have issued them 15 right-of-way violations, that come at a steep price. Is there an avenue for us to reasonably withhold reissuing a permit or finding out what legal avenues we have? Are we allowed to withhold them? And then at that point in time, we are risking them saying, you can't deliver legally to Miami Beach. Will that stop them? I don't know.
Yeah. And on streets where people don't have a place to pull over, but they do anyhow, like I'm thinking Amazon making deliveries on Collins Avenue or Indian Creek during rush hour, which blocks an entire lane of traffic because the buildings tell them they can't pull into their porte cochere. So how do we deal with that?
So we just had a situation that I arrived on the back end with FedEx, and FedEx had an exceedingly large number of right-of-way violations. And so one of the things that we did proactively was talk about, because obviously we have, hey, you can buy freight loading zone permits, but in every part of the city, there's not a freight loading zone. So what we did was we said there's going to be, we asked them to buy, I believe it was alleyway permits as well. And so now we've said your vehicles have access to be able to load or unload, deliver in alleyways as long as you're not completely blocking it, as well as freight loading zones. So we've tried to expand the definition of where we are going to allow them to park as long, because we want to get them off Alton, we want to get them off Collins. And so if we can have them pull into this alleyway, pull into a commercial loading, pull into a freight loading. And so that would be part of the education process of saying, listen, we know that in their minds they're stopping for 3 minutes and they're critical to, between Amazon, between FedEx, between UPS. People want their packages and we understand that. But at the same time, we also have to stop these issues where they are just pulling up onto a sidewalk at Collins. Now,
or not even, just parking, just leaving.
Just parking.
And there are definitely parts of the city that don't have alleyways or pullovers of any kind for them to, so I don't know how you address that.
Well, and for example, I live on Mid Beach, and so where I live, there's no alleyways. But also, I understand that the building I live in obviously has a loading dock, because most places do. I had to get my moving truck in, and so that's where they pulled in. And I feel in that moment, again, part of the education process, whether it's most of those areas also have the donuts on their front. Some of them have awnings that overlay. But there's always an answer in most of the buildings. Now, whether or not the driver chooses to take those answer, a lot of these companies have looked at these permits as a cost of doing business. And I think that's a longer conversation to have. But obviously, our right-of-way fines do have teeth. They start off at $1,000 and they climb from there. Right now, they start off at $5,000. Due to a new state legislation, they are about to drop down to $1,000, but that's for the first one. Then they'll climb to $5,000 and et cetera. So they have teeth. And I think
But those
for us,
permits are just to be able to use our FLZ zones.
well, so we've expanded the definition, so FLZ and alleyway. And so now because we want to encourage them to get off the major thoroughfares, because when it really comes down to it,
So
it's not
it's to our benefit for them to get that FLZ.
absolutely, from a safety aspect. Not even looking at it just from a flow of traffic, but from a safety aspect, because, the speed limit on Collins is 35. Nobody does 35. And then all of a sudden, if you're coming right up behind a FedEx vehicle, you create a dangerous precedent.
Commissioner Suarez.
I think the idea behind all of this, obviously, is to stop traffic, right? Or stop traffic in the sense where, stop it from backing up. And it's funny today because I had a call with you, right?
Yes, sir.
About the same exact issue, right? There was a freight loading going on right in the middle of Lincoln Road in Alton. And I was on my golf cart. And there was a truck moving this equipment into the gym, into Anatomy. And it was blocking traffic. And then there was a parking officer, right behind the light behind this truck, and I was trying to flag him down, and he didn't want to lower his window. Kind of looked like he was ignoring me, and then kept on driving. I asked him, "Hey, did you not see that truck blocking Alton? Okay, a whole lane?" And he said, "No, I didn't see it." And then I called you and I said, "Look, there's some serious issues here with accountability." The officer told me it was Officer Moreno. He told me he was on his way to a call. And I said, "Well, did you at least call this to the dispatch?" And he said, "No." He goes, "Why don't you do that?" So, I think if we're trying to encourage this sort of behavior from the delivery truck drivers, we need to also have some accountability with our parking officers, where if they see that happening, they either dispatch it in or they stop and correct the issue. Because, from what I saw today and the attitude that I had with this one officer, I can see why we're trying to write laws that help the traffic situation, but if our officers on the front line don't even care, where there's a blatant issue going on, then there needs to be, then you as a parking director need to address that.
So I will speak on what my direction that's going to go out to all of our team members that are on the front line by tomorrow, and that our supervisors will be briefing in their roll call for every single roll call next week, is that we are here to, one, for compliance and safety. And so I am, without regard of what the direction of the department or the director at the time were at the time, because I'm unaware, I know that my priority is going to be, we have officers that have certain zones that they're stationed at, and when they're on their way to a call, they're going to a call to address a complaint. But if you see something that is an obvious safety violation to traffic, to the individual, to the residents that are, here, the visitors that are here, stop and address it. And I've already spoken to our manager regarding the situation. I myself, on the 3rd of July, was going up to North Beach to go over some training with some officers. Right before you get to the light of 63rd going northbound on Collins, there was a moving truck in the right hand of the road. In my privately owned vehicle, I threw on my flashers, put this around my neck and started talking to the drivers and said, hey, I don't have anything to give you right now, but I'm going to have an officer dispatched here in 5 to 15 minutes. They'll be here. If you are still here, this is what they are going to do. Because, I don't carry equipment with me in my personally owned vehicle. Dispatched our officers, the vehicle was gone by the time they got there. And so my expectation is that if I'm doing that on my way to a training event in my POV, that's what all of our officers should be doing while they're out in their government vehicles. And I don't know if in the past it has been tunnel vision on I'm just going to do X, but moving forward, if we are on the move and we see a violation, we're going to stop and address that violation. And if that violation takes us more than 5 to 10 minutes to address, we are going to call that into dispatch and say, hey, I was on my way to X. I'm unable to go there because I've encountered this. So please dispatch somebody else to that one. Because, unlike maybe a police call where, they're going to let a jaywalker go to a more violent issue, nothing that we do generally is an emergency that can't wait 5 or 10 minutes while we address something right in front of us right there. And most of the issues that we address or we encounter can be fixed in 5 to 10 minutes because most people are going to be like, oh, I need to go. And they're gonna get in their vehicles and they're gonna go. And if it takes longer than that, then we do what we have to do. And, we call somebody else to address what we are on our way. But I can assure you that this is going to be at the top of my list, and our team is going to be aware, our leadership team is going to be aware, and it is going to be preached to our officers, and we are going to be out in the field as a team addressing it.
Good. Yeah, and look, Will, I know you're new on the job, and from what Commissioner Fernandez says, you're doing great work, and I want to see that work. I just want to make sure that culture in the parking department changes.
Absolutely.
You see a problem, you address it immediately.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
All right, Commissioner Bond, this is your item. Should we continue this item to September? So we can,
Yeah, why don't you give us an update of how it's going and next steps, if any. Did you cover what you
Your
needed
mic.
to on, sorry. Did you cover what you needed to on item 3 as well?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay.
So for essentially, just to summarize it, we will go ahead and make it mandatory as part of the renewal for a letter of attestation for all drivers delivering to Miami Beach. We'll work with our communications department on creating a 30-minute training video on what our expectations are in different parts of the city. And then on number 3, what we are going to do is whenever we get these hot button items, without being very specific, we will work with those business owners, get an MOU drafted, then start from there and see where we need to maybe go to step 2 and go to step 3.
Well, and something I'd want you to consider too, is something that I talked about with 2 parking directors ago. The notion of, people say, well, my truck's too big, I can't fit in that space, or, whatever. There are people from Amazon and UPS and DHL and FedEx who deliver in the tiniest, narrowest villages of Italy up the mountains, right? So I'm sorry if it's not quite as efficient as you would like it to be, but we are not a urban sprawl Texas city that was planned 20 years ago. We have all kinds of nooks and crannies. And if we have a repeat violator because they're like, hey, our trucks are too big, bring in smaller trucks. We heard that about somebody, a linen service to a hotel a year ago or something down in the Art Deco district. And I'm like, just change out the trucks.
Yep.
That's the cost of doing business here. You want that contract to service that hotel, you need a different size vehicle or a different delivery plan. Like, not my problem.
And we've seen that Amazon is moving to smaller vehicles.
Yeah.
FedEx has moved to smaller vehicles. So I think a lot of companies are getting the point and changing the way that they think about deliveries to highly urbanized areas like Miami Beach.
Okay. Yeah, so come back in September and let us know how it's working out and if the video's made and, if you're getting pushback, if you're seeing results, let's just get an update.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Were there 3 other items?
well, it was 3 and 4, and we've heard them together. And before we close, are there members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, all right.
So just to go a little further on what Commissioner Bott just said.
Your name for the record.
Omar Jimenez. I'm actually a Parkview Island resident and Commission Group 1 candidate. going a little further on what Commissioner Bracho said, I live on Parkview Island, and on Parkview Island we have one-way streets that are very extremely narrow. And so this happens on a daily basis when we have trucks delivering UPS, FedEx, Amazon. They literally block the entire road. And so we can't get through. And you know that firsthand because you live there. So this is a huge issue for us. And I really think that it would be great if we could encourage these companies in the future to set up their hubs, mini hubs here, and have smaller vehicles, which are known as like last mile vehicles that they already use in New York. Some of them are even pedal powered, kind of like bicycles with batteries on them. Miami Beach is a tiny place, and we should really be encouraging economic development through these companies to set up little hubs here and purchase these vehicles so that they can use them in Miami Beach through a more environmental and sustainable way. Thank you.
All right, any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's continue this item to September. All right.
Both 3 and 4, we're continuing to September, correct? Okay.
That's correct, yes. All right, with that, Mr. Director, let's call item number 8.
Okay, item number 8 is discuss the North Beach Water Quality and Parkview Canal report.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Director. And I'm proud to have this item today on the agenda as an update on Operation Clean Water, our city's focused and data-driven initiative to urgently restore water quality in the Parkview Island Canal and protect the our greater Biscayne Bay and waterway ecosystem. This is about infrastructure, but it's also about public health, about environmental safety, and our responsibility to safeguard our vulnerable waterways. There are short-term actions that we have as part of Operation Clean Water, but it also combines stormwater cleaning. We're looking at the UV disinfectation technology as part of a pilot program, and then other longer-term solutions with major sewer upgrades, the stormwater retrofits, and stronger regional accountability as well with the county and with the school system. I also want to recognize we have Omar Jimenez here in the audience who's been emailing us. He's the president of the Parkview Island Sustainable Association, and Omar, you've been advocating for this and reminding us of the real impacts that the water quality in this canal is having on a daily basis in the families of our city. So I want to recognize our staff, Lindsay, from Environmental and Sustainability, for an update of where we are with enforcement and where we are with the retrofits, where are we with Miami-Dade County, and the issue of the private outfalls, which have been a recurring issue for us.
Of course, Commissioner. Lindsay Prack, Deputy Resilience Officer and Assistant Director of the Environment and Sustainability Department for the city. 4 updates were specifically requested at the June committee meeting. However, the item was not heard. The most comprehensive update on Operation Clean Water was presented at the March 19th Land Use Sustainability Committee, which included a 2-hour presentation, including with Dr. Solo Gabriel from the University of Miami. The 4 updates specifically that we have for you today, and I'm of course happy to take additional questions afterwards. The first is regarding the Operation Clean Water Communications campaign. The city issued a press release to launch the beginning of the initiative. We also co-hosted a community cleanup with the Parkview Island Sustainable Association on May 19th. We also created and designed stencil markers. Let's see if I am facing this the right way. So these are some that we've designed as part of our stenciling of the drains. We've included Operation Clean Water, Drains to Bay, and Don't Be Trashy messaging. Right now we're working on the feasibility of these stencils, testing different paints, and also exploring what other municipalities are doing, such as QR codes and plaques. We're looking at nearby municipalities like Key Biscayne and North Bay Village that have similar infrastructure and also drain to the same water body that we do.
What are we doing in terms of of enforcement with the sanitation violations, with illegal dumping, with the overflowing dumpsters? What are we doing with that?
Of course. So since the launch of Operation Clean Water on March 19th and up to June 22nd, Code Compliance completed 534 inspections in the North Beach watershed, which
Okay.
led to 52 violations ranging from illegal dumping, overflowing or deteriorated dumpsters, alley litter, stagnant water, etc.
How does that compare to the number of violations we had prior to the initiation of Operation Clean Water?
I would defer to Code Compliance on the number of violations, but I will say that the proactive measures and the weekly walkthroughs have been a significant step forward.
Hernan, good
Hey,
afternoon.
good afternoon, Hernan Cardino. Mr. Chair, I don't have those numbers for you exactly, but probably very little because we're doing this in partnership with environmental, so we
May say
probably.
very little. What do you-
Very little to none
what?
because we probably wouldn't be out there looking for these violations. So when we team up and do these visits out to these locations, and of course we generate the violations, but generally we probably would not be there looking for these violations.
Okay, so this is an uptick in.
Absolutely.
Okay, because before we weren't focused in this area, so now you are focused and you've done these 500 inspections and you've written these reports. What have been the compliance with the sanitation violations? I see we had 45 sanitation violations, which when you look at that small area, that is a lot. I mean, it is, and that's what, over a 2-month period, you had 45 sanitation violations. Have these been brought into compliance?
Yeah, the most important thing is remediation and compliance, whether it's by the violator or city action.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be in focus. One of the biggest issues that were polluting our water was bird poop, I believe.
That was one of the genetic markers that was detected as part of the University of Miami study. They did detect human and dog sources as well, but they did detect overwhelming bird sources to the canal.
Right. So where I'm getting at with this is, what is going to be the solution for that? Because we can't, there's a lot of birds apparently that are pooping, and it's going into the water, and people can't go into the water because the amount of bird poop, cat poop, human poop. What is the solution for that?
Well, the University of Miami report highlighted that the storm water was the biggest influence, so it picks up all of these sources. So we need to target the storm water and also what's getting into the storm water, because the storm water pipes are just what's getting the water from the streets, picking up all of those pollutants, and then leading to the canal. So targeting above ground infrastructure, improving infrastructure, replacing things that have deficiencies, educating
For
the
example, a buzzword is an injection well.
That's an option.
But that's a long term.
Correct.
And so with Operation Clean Water, we're looking at short-term solutions. So what are we doing where are we with the enhanced sanitation of this area? So that, because the problem is if we don't maintain the area right, all that makes it into the stormwater system and then makes its way into the waterway. So where are we with the sanitation? What has happened over the past few months since the initiation of Operation Clean Water?
Our sanitation division looked at adaptive management techniques. So after the first University of Miami report, they really increased hand crew cleanings on Parkview Island itself. But what they noted over the past couple of years is Parkview Island itself wasn't the biggest source of items entering the canal system. Everything else was coming from the 81-acre catchment area to the east of the canal and draining towards. And so they actually recently adapted their strategies to clean more in alleyways, where they were identifying these issues that Code Compliance has actually been identifying. And
How many cleanings have we had in the alleyways? Do we have that information from sanitation? Because I just don't want anecdotally that we're, cleaning the alleyways. I want to know how frequently were they being cleaned before and how frequently are they being cleaned now?
I would defer to Public Works on the question on frequency.
But what are they cleaning? Right? Like, are they cleaning fecal matter?
They have picked up bags of feces. They've picked up things that have leaked out of dumpsters. And the assistant director of sanitation also recently reached out to the waste haulers to replace aging dumpsters that don't have drains or have been leaking in those alleys.
And we know that that has been a problem in the past. Mr. City Manager, can we get an update from sanitation specifically? What was the level of maintenance the sanitation was doing before? And I want to know on a week-by-week basis, what is the work that is being done? I want to make sure that we are on top of this area. So whether it be, you know, the issue with on-street, you know, making sure that there's street sweeping measures, or whether it be the alleyways, whether it be replacing the trucks, because not the trucks, the dumpsters, because they're leaking, whether it be making sure that homeless outreach is going out there because they're seeing human feces. And I know that that's one of the issues that they've been encountering.
They are, and they actually started going out at night and early mornings as well, and have encouraged the homeless population in the area to use the recreation center for bathroom facilities when they've encountered them, to provide services. And every time they do encounter an individual, they do offer the services.
I'm going to ask, of everything that is comprehensive with Operation Clean Water, and I don't want anecdotal that they're going out there on a weekly basis. I want to get an email knowing we were out there this day, this is what we encountered, this is how many homeless people we got into services. This is the alleyways that we cleaned this week during Operation Clean Water. This is the streets that we did the street sweeping. We weren't able to do this street because the cars were parked, but we hosed. We brought in the hoses and we hosed. I want to be as comprehensive of an update on a weekly basis, because I want to make sure that we indeed are prioritizing this in a way so that at the end of this pilot program, we see or the level of improvements that we need, that we expect. Any other updates as it relates to Operation Clean Water? How are we doing with the private outfalls? And we're clearly, we don't have jurisdiction, but Miami-Dade County has a jurisdiction. Where are we in our communications with Durham?
Correct. Our Public Works team meets regularly with the Durham Water Control Section and has brought both the private outfalls and Biscayne Beach Elementary to their attention. Durham issued a letter to Biscayne Beach Elementary requesting as-built of their system and also an update on what their cleaning measures have been within the system.
Where are we with our lining of the infrastructure of Biscayne Beach Elementary?
I will ask Assistant Director Public Works Rodney Knowles to address.
Good afternoon. Rodney Knowles, the Assistant Director of Public Works Department. Sorry, I just walked in. Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, where are we with the relining of the infrastructure for Biscayne Beach Elementary as it relates to Operation Clean Water and the work that we're trying to do to improve the water quality conditions of the Parkview Canal?
Hello. Hi. Patricia Rendon, Regulatory Compliance Manager. We have been working with the school for a very long time. We've done every assessment that we can do as a city. Dye test, smoke test, that's the last one we've done. We've done CCTV of their lateral. They asked me for our agreement. I gave it to them a couple months ago.
Our agreement, which agreement?
Our push-button agreement that we use for our trenchless rehabilitation. So I followed up with them last week. I sent them an email asking them if they had, found a better one or something, or if they were using ours and where were they at with their rehabilitation of the lateral. While we were doing the dye test and the CCTV of their lateral, we discovered that there was a lateral number 2 that was directly under it and kind of hiding. We don't have records of if that is still, of how, where that lateral comes from. It's very hard to CCTV because it was very compromised as we were going in through the right of way. There was a lot of debris, so we couldn't follow.
So it's compromised.
It is.
The issue is the infrastructure is compromised.
Yes, yes.
It's not in the conditions it should be in.
No. So what this? Okay, go ahead.
So how do we fix it?
So we would recommend to line it. First, have them give us a good, figure out where it is, where they're, one of the lateral number 2, where it goes, if it's still live and they're still connected. If not, we can cap and seal. I've requested them if we need to cap and seal that lateral.
What you're telling me sounds serious.
Huh?
What you're telling me sounds serious.
Well, it's just because we don't know where it is. Yeah. It's a little frustrating because we would, we just don't have good as-bills from them to move forward. At least one of them, we know where it is. We figured it out where, where it is in the school because we CCTV'd it. We followed it and we said, okay, and we have it in our GIS. We can rehabilitate that other one. We don't know where it's coming from, if it's still live or not, so.
What is the school system doing to assist us with this? Because, we want to address the problem, but it's also not our infrastructure.
Right.
Mr. Manager.
Assistant.
I need this to be addressed.
I will personally be involved in making sure that we're addressing this issue with Biscayne Elementary. I apologize, I thought it was further advanced, so I will be involved in this.
Well, this is why I need a weekly, I'm not happy right now. I need a weekly update on this. This is a priority. We created, and I appreciate that we started talking about the communications. We created Operation Clean Water, and the communications part of it is wonderful. This is the most serious part of Operation Clean Water, making sure that we address the source of this pollutant. And so I'm not very satisfied with the answer I'm getting right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say, I never get her name right. Gabrielle Soto.
Oh, Dr. Solo Gabriel.
Say it again.
Dr. Solo Gabriel.
Close, so close, but so wrong. But when she did her map that we got presented to us months ago, she identified one of the significant hotspots was coming from the grassy fields at Biscayne Elementary. And Biscayne Beach Elementary. And we subsequently had a project that we approved on the commission to do a joint effort regeneration and upgrade of their playground facilities so that it could be a public amenity. And as part of that, we were going to be able to have access to forget lining, replace them if we need to. We're finding things that are new that may still be active but completely corroded. We don't even know what's under there. And so I thought all of that was moving. That was months ago. And so to hear that you're not even getting the plans and, you send stuff over and they don't respond forever and it's not a you thing. I'm saying this is like languishing. And if we know, it'd be one thing if we're like, well, we think that might be a problem, but we also think something else might be. We know that particular part of this is a huge problem. We also know, the catchment area, sort of the parking lot behind CVS and Walgreens in that area is a disaster. And, so we're so far ahead of where we were a couple of years ago, where we know we've got some very significant hotspots, and we need to be moving heaven and earth and rattling cages to get it fixed, because it is unconscionable.
And to your point, Commissioner Suarez, Commissioner Bond, my apologies. I'm not sensing the urgency. Yeah. And that is frustrating me incredibly right now, because we created Operation Clean Water to create the urgency in the city administration that we want to restore the water quality in the Parkview Island Canal. And right now, it's not environmental sustainability's fault, because you guys are doing absolutely everything. But when it comes to addressing the issue of the hotspot that we know that exists at this school where we have said, we do not care, it's not our jurisdiction, it's not our property, but we're willing to go in and address it because it is our water quality that's being affected, is our families that are being affected. We want to prioritize it. I'm sorry, I am not feeling the urgency, and it's bothering me. Yes, Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Public Works, Rodney, you guys found a lateral that was just unaccounted for?
That's correct.
How many more do you think of these unaccounted laterals are there?
I think this is it.
You think what?
I think that is it. That lateral number that we're calling it number 2 is it. It's not
and so you said it's compromised or damaged.
Yeah, the material that the school uses, that is in their specs, is cast iron. It's very old. They've kept the spec, and they keep, even though they've, plastic laterals existed at that time, they kept on having the spec, which, I mean, in this area, it's horrible, with the, right next to the ocean. So they are compromised.
And this is a stormwater lateral?
No, a sewer lateral.
Okay. Sewer lateral.
Yes. So
not stormwater, sewer lateral coming out of the
so,
school.
Just so everyone's listening knows what we're talking about, this is the field behind Biscayne Beach Elementary, which is literally adjacent to Crab Alley, to the Tatum Waterway, to the canal around Parkview Island.
Right next to the water.
It's feet away.
I do not know how there is not a fire alarm.
Yeah,
the urgency of a fire alarm going off with this.
Let me finish my thoughts. Hold on 1 second. Okay. When did you find out about this? When did you find out about this unknown lateral?
So the last 2 tests that we did. So we did we've done a lot of tests, and I think we shared that information with you, Commissioner Fernandez, of all the testing and assessment that we've done in the area, and especially in the school. The smoke testing, the dye test is what alerted us, because then we could see, so just so you understand, we put the dye in the clean outs in the lateral inside, and we would see if it would come out of the storm. It didn't. We were trying to see cross connection.
When was that done?
That was maybe like a month ago, and then we decided to do the last assessment before we do rehabilitation, and efforts to find out a little more of where the second lateral is, and so we can rehabilitate. Because that's what we do. We do assessment first. We try to get all the information that we can, and then we do the assessment. So we have followed up with them, and we're waiting on to see if we can cap and seal that second lateral, and then we move forward. If they have a better contract than ours, then we can use, or they can use theirs, or, however we want to do it. But we have been doing a lot of work. I don't think that we haven't. We have been doing a lot of work in this area. And we've been working with our operations team.
Yeah, this is just news to me. I mean, and I sit on this committee. I didn't know that there was a second lateral
So there was some and Commissioner Fernandez asked for a lot of information, and we listed. I have a whole email here on all the information, on all the assessment that we've done in this area and in the school, and our next steps, and everything that we've done. Now last week we had the last assessment. We're ready to rehabilitate.
Would it be possible to maybe cap off this lateral for a certain period of time and then retest?
We don't want to cap and seal a lateral that may be still live, and
but it's not even supposed to be there.
And serves it might, we don't know. It might serve one of the buildings that's farther away, because it's at a lower elevation. But we don't want to make that call. We don't want to cap and seal it. Because it's still gonna, if it's compromised, it's still seeping.
You have a camera that you can go through, and
we tried, but it was compromised, so we couldn't keep going.
Okay, so you're telling me that it's just collapsed and you can't
At
put
one
it?
point, yeah, it's full of debris, so it might be pushing debris from the other side. It's not, we couldn't further.
Rodney, what's the?
We hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to push this off on anybody else. You're hearing it from me right now. Public Works is going to put our weight behind this. And you're absolutely right. If we're finding an issue here that we can be more proactive on,
Yeah, because
we're going to increase the way that and change the way that we're communicating, because all of you should be aware of what the current status is.
Because I'm hoping this is the issue, right? I'm hoping this one thing is what's causing the Parkview Canal. Just because I don't really buy the fact that there's just a bunch of bird poop, because there's birds everywhere in Miami Beach, and we don't have this problem everywhere in Miami Beach. There's birds pooping all the time. You know, not more in Parkview than it is in South Beach, but I have a feeling that this could be the issue. And again, I'm a little surprised that I wasn't really, like the chair said, there should have been an alarm gone off. I didn't hear an alarm, and this is the first time I'm hearing about it. But
And this is our initiative. I mean, we created this to find solutions, and the school board is a political body. If they're not moving fast enough, if they're not answering, we need to know. We need to know so that we can. If I need to call the chair of the school system again, I will. If we need to call our school board member, we will. But this is priority. It's such a big priority. It's the reason why we created this Operation Clean Water. It was to create a sense of urgency. And urgency is not waiting for bureaucracy, for procurement, for a new contractor. It is like the emergency is to go in and get it done, because this is a matter of public health. It is a matter of public health. We need to restore this water quality level. We need urgent intervention by the school system. And if they're not doing it and they're not responding timely enough to you guys, then we as the elected leadership need to be told so that we can mobilize our political resources to get it done.
Yep. And if I might add,
Yes.
you know, not only did we, create this and prioritize it, but it's also funded. Like, there's money that's been allocated to be spent to do all these things. And, these days that's not to be taken lightly. And as Alex said, people can pick up the phone and talk to other people in other organizations to try to get things moving again. In addition, I mean, obviously, public safety is the most important thing, not just for our residents, but then the people who live directly adjacent. But we have a ton of tourists who paddle and kayak all over the place and go, it's lovely. It's like being on a lazy river. I mean, I used to sit on my deck and watch people sort of putting their paddle up across their knees and just kind of drifting around the island, because it's this, this cool little place to do it. And now, in addition to tourists, we've got national headlines. One of the most polluted beaches is in Miami Beach. It's not exactly accurate, 'cause it's not a beach, but nonetheless, we're doing all this work to rehabilitate our reputation and get people coming back to Miami Beach. The last thing we need is to say, oh yeah, except, come back to Miami Beach, but don't go swimming because the water's toxic.
Yeah, so what do we need next from the school system? What is it that we need next from the school system so that we can move forward with a level of speed that we should? You're the director. You are the director. I need to know from you.
All right. What I'm going to do is I need to regroup internally with team to find out who the points of contact are in the school system, and just put it in right on their desk and ask for some action and demand it. And like you said, if I can't get a clear outline as to where they're going to, or what the plan of action is, then wherever we're legally allowed to intervene, we're going to go ahead and go and pull the trigger on that.
Can you please keep all the members of the Land Use Committee informed?
We need to get weekly updates. I thought that having this monthly discussion on the committee would maintain the level of urgency on this, so that we would get, progress reports. I'm getting reports, but I'm not getting the progress. Okay. And so my expectation is going to be, this committee needs to get weekly reports on I don't want to micromanage, but I feel like in this case, if we don't micromanage, we're not going to get the results that we are expecting from this operation. And I am not creating an operation, Clean Water, to be embarrassed at the end of it. We need to restore the water quality, and it is an embarrassment to us as elected officials that our community has elevated levels of enterococcus cocci in this waterway, and that for years people haven't been able to touch this water, and that here we are trying to make a dent on it, and that there's these issues that we can't get a solution to. So we need to get the weekly updates on this issue with the laterals, but I also want to know. I want to make sure. I need to know which alleyways they're cleaning, what days are going out and doing the sanitation, street sweeping, and anything else that's being done. Otherwise, the pressure is not going to be there, and we're not going to get the results.
And it's really critical that you let us all know, because we're all in this together. Like, clearly, none of us sitting up here, none of us are happy. But at the same time, if you guys come to us and say, we have a roadblock, then we can all try to figure it out together. Right? If you can't get somebody to return a phone call, maybe one of us can, or know somebody who can. But if we don't know that that's a roadblock, then, another month passes and we haven't made any progress. And coming back in August with weekly, or in September with weekly updates is not,
No.
I want to get them starting immediately and without,
And I have to say, I'm very concerned with the change of leadership in the Public Works Department.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that. Departments need stability, and having a change of leadership right now in the Public Works Department in the middle of our operation, that is the number one thing, water quality. To me, it's very disappointing that we are in this point right now in this department.
Yeah.
I hope the city manager is watching.
All right.
I would echo that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to item number 9. Oh, members of the public wishing to speak on this item. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Omar, yes.
So good afternoon again. This is actually the item that I've been here for. I try and be as collaborative as possible. For the last 5 years, I've been working really, really hard at this item. And my heart's breaking right now. This is absolutely egregious to be in this situation. First, I want to thank Dr. Solo Gabriel and her team at the University of Miami for this urgent and sobering Phase 2 report. The findings are more than alarming. The Parkview Canal remains severely toxic, with enterococci levels, especially near Biscayne Beach Elementary, reaching 240,000 mpn per 100 milliliters. That's 3,428 times over the safe limit for recreation. This isn't just one of the most polluted waterways in Miami Beach, it's literally one of the most polluted waterways in the entire country. And it hasn't been for the first time either. We were named one of the dirtiest beaches in America 2 or 3 years ago. So this has been ongoing for the last 5 years. And as you correctly said, Ms. Batt, this is a national embarrassment for our resort city. It's a local public health crisis. Over the past 8 years, I've personally suffered 5 serious skin infections linked to the exposure in this canal. And I really have to ask at this point, how many others, children, neighbors, visitors, how many have suffered in silence without knowing the cause? This city made commendable infrastructure upgrades on Parkview, and that's why we're seeing an improvement there. But the data proves that this has not been enough. We really need to act to address this hotspot at Biscayne Beach Elementary that is so much worse than the original Parkview kayak launch. There's so much that I have to say here, but I think it's really all been said. And one of the other main things that I'm here to say today is that meanwhile, our city's outdated infrastructure is also being used to carry sewage from Bay Harbor Islands, Bal Harbor, Surfside, and soon to be Indian Creek Island. And we receive zero compensation for it, while our infrastructure here is absolutely crumbling, as we've heard today. And who is holding the bag at the end? The Miami Beach taxpayer, with increased levies, fees on water and sewer, and we're really just at our limit already, you know? We can't keep going in this direction, so I'm really grateful that you guys went all in on it today, and I'm really hoping that this is not just during this meeting, but that we will get some action before the kids go back to school, because I have the teachers from Biscayne Beach Elementary reaching out to me. One of the teachers, Miss Garcia, was at the 4th of July party that I attended on Parkview Island, and she pleaded with me. She said, please, it's in the groundwater. How do we know that the kids aren't getting sick from it now when they go back to school? Please, guys, let's really work on this. I know that we can do it.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you so much. Larry Schaefer, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Larry Schaefer, 233 81st Street. This is a disgusting crisis. I don't feel confident in this plan or this team. The public works director resigned. Maybe he's smart to do so to leave us with this problem. I actually think that the underground sewer pipes are leaking into the storm pipes that all have holes. So it's an underground problem. It's a problem with the Biscayne aquifer. It's not just, you can't just go street sweeping and picking up bags of poop to solve this. You're working on the surface. The problem might be underground. Public Works just found a lateral after all these years, all this money spent. The school is leaking crap and it's our problem. That's the school's problem. Shouldn't Mr. City Attorney file a legal claim right now? And why are we giving millions in NBCRA money to build this school a playground while they poop on us? And look at the test results for the 72nd Street garage. Are there broken sewer or storm pipes under that location? Are we ever going to be able to build there? PVI just catches the problem. The problem is throughout North Beach. The highly paid employees. When are we going to see measurable results, like differences in the level of enterococcus? Would you bet your job on this plan? If in 6 months we didn't get better, do you think you still deserve that job? And the politicians on the dais, how important is this to you? We're drowning in poop water. We thought it was just PVI. Now we know it's all throughout North Beach. Have you told the property owners in this area? Are their dogs drinking polluted water out of the puddles? Tomorrow during the budget meeting, you'll tell us what's important to you. You'll either vote for money to clean up this poop mess, or you'll vote for new administrative assistants for all the departments. You'll either vote for discretionary grants to nonprofits, or you could fix our problem all around us. If this doesn't get fixed, why don't we bring in county, state, and federal environmental groups, assets, resources, ask these politicians to help us, and say we can't do it on our own. I have had 2 ear infections from swimming in polluted ocean waters as well. I've been personally damaged by this. Please fix it.
Thank you, Larry. I see we have Sharon with her hand raised. Sharon, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, Sharon Weiss, 233 81st Street. I echo the sentiment of Omar and Larry. This is disgusting. I mean, absolutely disgusting. Not only is it our waterways, it's the groundwater that's coming up. People walk around in flip-flops all the time. They walk through puddles. What kind of bacteria and gross things are being absorbed? I mean, this is all we have is the water. It's Miami Beach. Like, if we didn't have the beach, you might as well just live in Miami. You know, the budget is coming up tomorrow. There's a budget meeting. You're redoing the budget. There seems to be plenty of money for whatever the police want. If nobody comes here, we don't need so many police, because nobody's going to want to come here to swim in our oceans because they're polluted, and no one's going to want to live here. I mean, it is absolutely disgusting. I am disgusted. We have money for everything except the boring stuff, which is actually the important stuff, because like Omar, like Larry, I have gotten sick from swimming in the water with nothing posted, nothing saying, don't touch the water. By the way, do you know if you go on Google Maps, somebody has replaced the name of Parkview Island. They've renamed it Enterococcus Island. It's not funny. This is serious, guys. And you know what? Everyone in North Beach, everyone in Miami Beach should file a VAB hearing and ask to have their property taxes drastically reduced, because we're living in a sewage pit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring back this item in September. But I won't hesitate to call for a special meeting of this committee if it is necessary.
I was just about to say, I don't think this should wait till September. I think we should have a report back in 2 weeks just after the commission meeting, and possibly call a special commission meeting and have a plan of action, because and they're right. We give a bunch of money for a lot of good causes, but when it comes to the boring stuff, it's not as exciting. But on the 11th, we have a decision to make on how we're going to move. Spend a lot of monies that we have. I think one comes to mind, and I've always been pretty consistent on this, like those Deauville fines. I think the best use of those funds should be for this particular project. And it's something that everyone is going to be able to benefit from, especially in North Beach. So I would welcome a special meeting.
Yep.
So at the right time, if it's necessary, I'll be happy to ask the mayor for a special meeting. And in the meantime, I hope it's clear the urgency and the updates that we want, and we're not getting them. I'll call for a meeting of this committee. We'll ask for a special meeting of the commission, but it has to be clear. The commission passed this unanimously, and the expectation was for there to be action. Thank you. Let's call item number 9.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 9 is discuss an ordinance increasing fines and penalties for frequent code violations that affect resident quality of life.
Hernan, walk us through this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Hernan Cardino for Code Compliance. So this was a referral from commission to this committee by you, Mr. Chair. And it's asking us to look at an ordinance to increase fines and penalties for frequent code violations that impact resident quality of life. So what we did is we went back 1 year for a 1-year period and kind of highlighted what are the top 10 violations that we're seeing in code compliance. And that's the graph you have below. And they're in order. The first one was illegal dumping. Second was overflowing garbage. Third was business tax receipts. Fourth was overgrown vegetation. Then it goes on to graffiti, forthwith violations, which are mostly sanitation, noise, short-term rentals, right-of-way violations, and short-term rental business tax receipts. So we also compiled the penalty and fine schedules for some of these violations, and we've attached that to the memo for your consideration, and maybe looking at these and considering which you would want to amend the fine schedule. There is one point of distinction, and that is when it comes to the graffiti. At your last commission meeting for second reading, you just passed enhanced penalties, increasing it by 100% with respect to the violator, not necessarily the establishment where the graffiti is at. That still remains under 48 hours for removal. If not, the city steps in and we do a hard dollar lien cost back to the unit owner.
So let me ask you about the overgrown vegetation.
Yes, sir.
So that one has no fine associated to it?
Yeah, I believe that comes out of Chapter 58 in our Code of Laws and Ordinances, and that violation is set for the special magistrate to determine a fine. Our whole goal is to get compliance, so if we do not have compliance, then if it's somewhere where the city can take action and we can do a hard dollar lien back, we'll remediate, and then it goes to the special master for adjudication, and that's what triggers the lien process for the action that the city took to remediate.
I have to say, a lot of times when we look at abandoned buildings throughout our city, or abandoned properties throughout our city, one of the greatest indicators of it is the overgrown vegetation, and not having a fine associated to it and waiting until a special master hearing that can get delayed and delayed and delayed. To me, it kind of contributes to the problem. Vernon?
Correct, because our neighborhoods are looking at this eyesore for a prolonged period of time because of due process.
And I get that, properties might sit vacant. They're going through regulatory processes, getting approvals, permits, which we know are onerous. And that's not a property owner's fault. But that doesn't give them a carte blanche to, for example, have graffiti. Well, we don't allow them to have graffiti. There is an onus to correct the graffiti. In this case, that doesn't give them carte blanche to have overgrown vegetation. That is just, an imposition on everyone else. What would be a recommended fine for the first, second, subsequent offenses associated with overgrown vegetation?
So that's what our discussion is here today. Whatever the pleasure of the committee is to recommend to the commission, that's what we'll go with. But I agree with you. Listen, but when we drive by these properties, what code compliance is doing, besides trying to find a contact person to get compliance, all we're doing is dropping it into the legal process so that we can force compliance, and that means getting the city approval to go onto that property and remediate and do the hard dollar lien costs.
Again, what, I got that you're bringing, we're the ones discussing this, but what would you recommend if we were to impose a violation, a fine for overgrown vegetation? What is it that staff, that the administration would recommend as an appropriate violation for this?
If it was me personally, $1 million, but we really haven't gone back and looked at that to analyze and give you a recommendation of what that dollar figure should be. We just haven't.
Okay, all right. Do we feel we want there to be a monetary violation, a monetary fine on overgrown vegetation, which is what is oftentimes associated with abandoned properties?
I think maybe we should have a warning period, maybe 3 warnings, and then after that you start to get a violation, and there needs to be a due diligence period of notice for these. Because if a property owner is out of town and then for example, if the landscaper was supposed to come but doesn't come, there's a credit card failed or it doesn't show up, and you know, there's a million of reasons why it wouldn't, but I think if we give plenty of notice, then and they, despite all the notices, and they continue to be a habitual offender, then there's really no more leniency to be given.
I would suggest we don't need to give 3 warnings. You know, let there be an education period, and then you get one mulligan, and then, you know.
Well, it could be different owners, right? I mean, I'm not saying within a year, I'm saying 3 total for a property, for the history. So, you know, I'm not saying reset it once a year, I'm just saying for the course of, you know, that property's lifetime. Or maybe you do want to reset it, maybe once a year.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think if it's the lifetime of the property, it's 12 different owners and totally different circumstances, and, like, I think whoever's the owner now needs to.
Well, Hernan, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Hernan,
you're the professional.
So
you
listen,
are the professional. You tell us.
What happens is
we want compliance. What do you suggest?
Yes.
So here's what happens. It's going to impact the character, nature, and repose of our neighborhoods. When we start adding these warnings, understand it's
we're
still
delaying.
Exactly. So that neighborhood is still looking at that dilapidated property, overgrown vegetation, whatever it may be, for that extended period of time for these warnings to take in to go into place. I think Chapter 58, the way it was written, was probably because statutorily you have to give a time to comply.
Well,
right? You have to
hours
give a notice
comply.
you have to give a notice to cure. Absolutely.
You know, I remember an email that we got 2 weeks ago, and I think you chimed in. It was a woman in North Beach, a couple palm fronds fell on the floor, and we were given they gave a warning, right?
Correct.
And that property owner was really irate and said, why am I getting a warning when there's so much other problems? And if we would have fined that person, I think it would have been even worse.
But you start with a warning. You give someone a 24-hour warning.
Or, you know, 72 hours, so that if, you know, whatever, if it's on a Friday night and they can't deal with it.
But what I'm saying is, if it's just palm fronds that fell down and the landscaper wasn't there to show up, and then.
But that's not overgrown vegetation. We know what overgrown vegetation is.
The
overgrown vegetation is, or the abandoned apartment building look, or, you know, where you just have, it just becomes a jungle. And that's what happens. And a lot of times when we hear from neighborhoods that are complaining about the aesthetics of some of these abandoned properties, when you really look at it, the biggest eyesore in it is the one thing that we don't have a fine for, and the one thing that the can gets kicked down on the road through procedure, which is special master, where you can ask for continuance. And we, of course, now we have, thanks to Commissioner Dominguez, we have a limit on the amount of continuances. But still, you know, you have to wait till you get on the calendar for the special master. And how long can that be, Mr. Director?
And that's what hurts us.
That could be a few months.
That's what hurts us, yeah.
So for a few months, our regulatory department in charge of enforcement is with your hands tied for several months because of what? Of our red tape and our bureaucracy. And meanwhile, all the other neighbors are stuck with the eyesore that they're asking us to correct, and they don't understand why a city like the city of Miami Beach can't correct the eyesore because of bureaucracy. So I think we have the opportunity to fix it. I think at the very least, you know, we can put a warning to correct the violation within 72 hours. That way, usually if it's a homeowner, it's pretty easy. If you're out of town to take care of it, and if you know, you can take care of it. But if you're just someone that's abandoning the property and you're not going to take care of it, and you start accruing these fines.
Just to be clear too, when it comes to not only just vegetation, but garbage, we do have a 24-hour sanitation violation that if it's not corrected within 24 hours and the city moves in, remediates the issue, and then bills back that responsible property owner. In the case, Commissioner Suarez, that you mentioned, you know, you're right, that was a warning. But that was, and we thank that condominium because we got a responsible party to remedy that situation. That's not what we encounter all the time.
Yeah. I want to also caution against the overflowing dumpster because there are sometimes people that just dump, you know, they just go to a random dumpster and they just dump their stuff in there, right? And they don't necessarily live on the property. I don't want to punish the property.
In fact, I wouldn't even put a violation there because if they have an overflowing dumpster, the company is already charging them an overflow fee, aren't they, Mr. Director, Mr. City Manager? But with commercial accounts, I know.
With commercial accounts.
With commercial accounts, at least, if you have overflowing garbage, you know, the waste hauler is already usually charging you for having an overflow, and it's not cheap. They charge you a lot. So, and to your point, a lot of times it's not even the property owner's fault. People come in and they'll dump stuff in your container. All right. I would like to send this back to the commission because I do think this is something we should be addressing. I want the administration to work on a recommendation. Let's work offline on something that we can send back to amend the fee schedule where we incorporate a warning with a 72-hour cure period, and then start imposing fines after that. And what would the committee feel comfortable with as a starting fine? Do we want to start at $1,000? Do we want to start at $500 for the overgrown vegetations?
I mean, Mr. City Attorney, is there a state mandated guideline?
I mean, the statutory limit is $1,000, but I think you may want to start below that. Remember that this fine could be issued to any property owner. It could be residential, it could be apartment,
we can start at
it could be commercial.
250, and because if it's accruing, if it's 250 first violation, 500 second violation, then third violation $1,000.
And we don't have there's not currently a violation for overgrown vegetation.
The way the ordinance is structured,
it's special magistrate.
It's part of our property maintenance ordinance. So once a violation is issued, the case is brought to the special magistrate, who can set a fine based on really the specific nature of the fine. And overgrown vegetation is part of a much broader ordinance.
But it's a public safety issue too, because once somebody recognizes that it's an abandoned house or it's in process of foreclosure or whatever, that's when people are like, oh great, it's a crash pad. So,
those, by the way, those end up being the homes where we end up having homeless encampments. Mm-hmm. And I've seen
and
it.
Drug deals and all kinds of stuff.
I've seen this happen. Those homes that they're so overgrown that it's clear that no one is living there. Then that's where individuals go in and start squatting there, and it's a problem it creates a bigger problem. So you'll work on an item to bring back. Let's work with my office and the city attorney, and we'll take it to commission. And we're going to recognize Commissioner Soares, and then we're going to go to members of the public.
And just for my colleagues, how many warnings did you want to give? I personally think, to be safe, I think we should give at least 2 warnings. And then on the third, there's a fine, $250.
I would do 1.
I would do 1, but get them 72 hours.
Yep.
Where you have 3 days to correct. In 3 days, you should be able to correct.
Business days.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if the landscape, if it's on a Friday.
I don't want to create an
landscaper doesn't pick up-
inconsistency. I don't know if how we do for other things, if we go based on business days or calendar days.
Under 10 days, we're doing straight days. But this doesn't negate the fact that we still move on the ones that are public health, safety, and welfare, like the line of sight at intersections. And if it's a house that's not being taken care of, then we move in immediately on that. And the city goes ahead and remediates.
I'm just trying to protect the unsuspecting, single-family resident home or very small condo that maybe just there's a lapse in maintenance. And, I just want to make sure that we don't really, because what's going to happen is, this is going to be a net, and we're going to start capturing people who we're going to have all good reasons of why, but, and that's why I'm just insistent on giving enough warnings where there's not going to be any more excuses of why. But let's see how this irons out.
All right. Very good. Are there members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none in person and seeing none in Zoom, we can move to the next item.
Mr. Chair, on number 9, so by acclamation, you're going to be sending a recommendation to the City Commission to establish fines and penalties for overgrown vegetation. Will this conclude the item, or do you want this to come back to the
No,
land
we
use
can send
committee?
it to commission.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, we'll work with you as the item sponsor.
Sure. And if anyone wants to join me, you're more than welcome to. As co-sponsors.
I'll join you. Nick? Nick?
You got second warning.
I heard you.
Yeah.
We can work on it. Okay. All right.
Very good,
So
thank you.
let's call item number 10.
Okay, item number 10 is a request for the administration to explore and recommend new forward-leaning resiliency code updates for our built environment.
All right, Commissioner Bond, this is your item.
Yeah, this is just, we have so much new development or rehabilitation development going on, and we don't have anything to really further incentivize or really incentivize projects to embrace green roofs or green walls, living walls. I just saw something that is being built as of right in North Beach, and it's another glass box, and there's no green anything. There's nothing to sustain it. And I see, glass boxes are the least efficient to keep cool. And, we're in a warming climate. We're in a hot city in a warming climate. And, it's confounding to me that you can have cities all over South America, all over Europe, some with fairly limited means, public housing in some cases in the States being built with green roofs or living walls, and they are being done so not just for aesthetics. Not only do they look great, but they also help reduce cooling and heating costs and help with sound barriers when things are done between the walls. And it's unfathomable to me that we don't do this here more aggressively. And so I've been on, kind of on this for a little while in various forms. And I really want to see more, really strong encouragements to do this. So I'll let you take it away from here.
Okay, as you'll note in the memo, we had included a summary of our current resilience and adaptation standards and environmental mitigation standards, and it goes well beyond the type of construction that people are building, to your point, Commissioner Bott. One of the things that we had suggested in the memo in terms of forward-leaning best practices is we've identified some ideas and concepts that could be considered And these include establishing formal blue and green infrastructure policies for city projects, improved and enhanced and appropriate plant material in rights-of-ways, introducing true swales which are properly sloped for stormwater retention, better utilizing and prioritizing our right-of-way for the purpose of resiliency and mobility, utilizing interlocking permeable pavers for on-street parking, prohibiting or further restricting the storage of vehicles below grade, incentivizing living shorelines and mangroves, requiring decorative ponds in residential districts, in commercial districts, and mixed-use districts. Additional building height could be provided to reduce building footprints and create usable green spaces along the perimeter of the property that better accommodate stormwater and allow water to percolate into the ground. And then finally, creating additional incentives for property owners to build blue and green roofs that can assist with additional stormwater management and reduce potable water demands. There is a separate item that was recently referred to land use regarding incentivizing green roofs, so I'm sure that'll be discussed as part of that.
So where do we go from here? I mean, there are a couple things in these lists that I'm not keen on. I'm not keen on a transfer of a TDR because I just don't think we've got experience doing this well, and I think we'll get loopholed to death and it'll end up poorly. But pretty much almost everything else I was enthusiastic about. I'd be a little bit leery of additional height opportunities because I think we're going to get that stuff down our throats whether or not we want it to. But you know, you know, to me it's a no-brainer. So how do we move forward with all due haste to codify this so anybody coming with a project has to have an element of greening the project?
Unfortunately, with the preemptions under Senate Bill 180, it's going to be difficult to mandate that in the LDRs. There may be ways of incentivizing that, but incentives usually require allowing for additional height, additional floor area, or something of that nature. A lot of the other things that we've recommended in here for further consideration are non-land development regulation projects or non-private property development projects. But if it's a private property development that you want to really zero in on, then unfortunately, really the only way to do that would be through incentives.
Thoughts?
You want to create an incentive program, bring back to committee?
I fear, though, that our only incentives that anyone's going to
height
care
and
about is
FAL.
height and density.
Yeah.
And I'm not really willing to trade up on that. I mean, can we just take Miami Beach and make it its own state?
Its own state, yeah. It's could be fun.
It would be great.
We could issue our own executive orders. All right, so it seems like we probably need to close this item.
I mean, before we close conversation, is there stuff that we can put in, not at least codify when it's something we're doing for our projects, that, you know, if we need to build a new parking lot someplace, that we do it with a green roof or a curtain wall or something? I mean,
You can certainly set forth standards for city projects that the city will voluntarily adhere to. And those could be in the range of requiring, for instance, permeable pavers for future city parking lots, or the upgrading of city parking lots, or new buildings built by the city incorporating this type of green roof technology or other functions like that. That's certainly something that we could include in our own procedures and policies.
and that doesn't get preempted by anybody else.
No, because that's
Okay.
where we own that. And so that would be like a homeowner saying, oh, I want to do this. Sure, you can do that. There's nothing preventing you from
So
doing that.
let's do that at a minimum. I mean, especially, we've just been talking about what we're going to do with west lots, and Will had mentioned permeable pavers, and I talked with Joe Gomez. That's how long ago this conversation started about permeable pavers and materials. So yeah, let's do it for the city, and then maybe as things settle, there'll be an opportunity to expand that without trading away height and density for private projects.
All right, so you want to bring,
So we'll bring it back in September with your.
Why don't we come back in October, so that way I can circle back with parking and with facilities and fleet and CIP and Public Works, just to get their thoughts on this, and come back with something a little bit more comprehensive in terms of what we can do?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right. So we're going to show this item continued to November.
October.
I'm sorry, October. So with that, Mr. Director, let's call item number 12.
Okay, item 12 is discuss updates to the resiliency code.
And this is really just cleanup language, and so I don't, unless the committee has questions on the item, I'm happy to entertain a motion to pass.
I'll second.
All right, we can show that moving back to the city commission. And this is just updated language, just
Correct.
cleanup. I'm gonna leave item number 13 for next month, just because we do have a time limit today, and there's a couple more items that we do need to get through. Commissioner Suarez, let's call item number 14, it's your item. The director would read it into the record.
Sure. This is item number 14, discuss amending the land development regulations to address the additional open space requirements for two-story, single-family homes that exceed 60 feet in length.
Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, if you could just tee it up for me. that'd be
Sure,
great.
be glad to. This is a proposal to amend section 7.2.2.3 of the LDRs regarding single-family development regulations, and specifically, this section of the code that we've identified requires that for interior side elevations for two-story homes that are greater than 60 feet in length, they have to incorporate additional open space. And this additional open space is in the form of carve-outs on those elevations. And right now, there are some regulations regarding the shape of these and the depth of these, and we suggested some modifications to provide some more regularity and simplification that we think architects will better understand. The overall size of the open space will remain the same, but some of the changes that we've made, and the committee did discuss a couple of months ago, were allowing for portions of that required interior open space to consist of, in addition to landscape pervious area, in-ground water feature such as a pond or a decorative pool. I know some members of the committee had a concern with that, but the rest of the language is either a clarification or the requirements remain the same. And we've recommended approval, and if there's consensus on this, you can send it to the commission for a referral to the planning board.
You guys have any comments?
I have no comments about this. I just want to make sure we have good water retention areas in this. We are not creating any issues with that.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
I'd make the move the item.
Second, members of the public wishing to speak on this item, seeing none in person, none online. With that, we can send this item back to the city commission with a favorable recommendation. The next item is item number 16. Commissioner Bott, this is your item.
And I'll read this into the record, Mr. Chair. This is discuss the incorporation of resiliency measures in city parks and green space projects.
Commissioner Bott.
This sort of follows on the heels of the last one, not specifically to green roofs or curtain walls, living walls, but, this idea of we've got, and reading through the attachments, we do have a lot of things that we recommend in how we do things so that we are as resilient as possible. What to me is complicated, and Amy, I'll ask you to walk us through this, is it seems like there are urgings and strive for, and we recommend, or where possible, and it's kind of all over the place, as opposed to this is what we need to do and find a way to do it. And so how do we get from a very thorough suggestion of good best practices to this is what needs to happen and find a way to get it done? No pressure, just asking.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Amy Knowles, Chief Resilience Officer. You know, this is an excellent item, and I think there's pages of stuff here because our city is a leader in this area, and we have done so much. But there's a difference between something being an ordinance and a resolution and a plan. And then you have scope of works and you have, you know, site-specific design. So we have so much to draw from in our city, and I think the proof is in the pudding. We have amazing parks that people come to visit. You know, we've got Marie Skip, we have Brittany Bay. We are constantly giving tours. We now have Bayshore that we're opening. Yes. So people are coming to see the work we're doing, so I don't want to forget that. We do have within this document, you know, it was kind of a surprise when, you know, we saw the document even pop up on the agenda. This is an internal document we use for staff that we're using to, you know, when my department reviews projects, we're checking for these things and we're giving this, you know, sort of, you know, feedback to the originating department, which is usually CIP, it may be Parks, it may be Public Works, but we all work together to make sure this information is there. And then it should get written into the scope of the project, and then a lot of times there's feasibility analysis, right? Is this doable? What is the cost? And so that's really where things, you know, come down to whether it gets built or not. So this is a compilation. We can further refine it. I will say there's a lot of ordinances in here, and you know, ordinances, they need proper vetting, right? Even one small ordinance change can mean a lot. So that's probably the highest standard. That's when you must do something. So we do have a lot of that, but when it is something like, for example, flood risk reduction. You know, this document is combined into a few different areas, about 8 different categories. Flood risk reduction, extreme heat, energy efficiency and renewable energy, water efficiency, litter and plastics reduction, construction materials, Florida-friendly landscaping, and transportation and mobility. There's a lot of facets to resilience. It's not just, you know, flooding, and it's about our ability as a community to bounce back and also to create community spaces. So there's a lot in here, but some things, for example, like flood risk, we have, you know, our stormwater master plan. We have our chapter 54 for floods. We have different resolutions of plans that we've adopted, like our blue-green strategy concept plan for the city. You know, we've got our comprehensive plan. So there's a lot here already, and we have explored a lot of new technologies, the R-tanks, you know, we have a retention lake in Bayshore. So it's a matter here of really, you know, selecting these options and prioritizing them and trying to fit them in those spaces.
So I guess my question, to interject for a second, is how does that happen? Is it part of the review process that the person reviewing the project for that respective area, flood risk reduction or parking or whatever, or, you know, if it's your department or somebody else's, they have to know to look for these elements to be incorporated? I mean, what happens if somebody doesn't or forgets, or like, oh, who's going to know the difference?
Yeah. Well, I think fortunately, this is kind of how we do business now. I think the city's been at this for some time. You know, I've been here almost 10 years. You know, we've got David Gomez, we've got John Rebar. We have a full staff team, and a lot of this is really kind of written into those scopes, and it's something we strive for through the capital budget process. We've done training for project managers on what resilience is and how to tie these things in. So we do have a lot to draw from. We have adopted plans and strategies. So it comes through a review process. So yeah, we get emails like, please review this plan, and we give all of our comments, and other departments do that as well, whether it's transportation and mobility or parking. So we do have a process, you know, in place for that.
So would it be possible, without becoming too onerous, to do like an internal, you know, version of a LEEDS program where you can say best practice would be doing these 10 things, this building gets a silver because it's doing 8 of these things, so that, you know, we as electeds can share with our constituents, you know what, this is actually super resilient, here's why, or this gets a 12, it's a LEEDS plus, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, because out of the 10 most important things, we're doing, you know, those plus 2 others. Like, is there a way to kind of quantify it beyond, this is how we operate, it's best practices, and we kind of do that by nature?
I think, you know, LEED is, and I'm happy you brought that up, because we have a green building ordinance, and so we are requiring LEED for buildings of a certain size, and so we can use that. I think it would be really difficult to come up with our own certification process. We can simplify this document to say like what's required and like what's encouraged, and there's things in here that can be explored, like extreme heat. You know, of course we're planting trees and we're adding shade, and we have, you know, we have cold water at parks, but, should we have misters? Should we do other things? There's more work that can be done here. But I think a certification program would be probably on
Not
us.
literally a certification, but like a checklist, like so something that like a scorecard. So it's not literally something that we're certifying, but something that we can disseminate saying, hey, this new parking lot is not just a parking lot. Look at what else it's accomplishing, hidden in within the walls of the parking structure.
Yeah, I understand. I think we could come up with something that is easy to communicate, that highlights the different best practices and ordinances and standards.
I think I would like to continue this and see what you can come up with. Because I think, we all take a lot of things for granted and we're like, oh, we could do better. And it's nice to share every once in a while when we have something that we are doing better than other folks or better than we were 10 years ago, that we can share that and that can be a success story.
I like
and
what you're
educate ourselves and our colleagues and our
and the community.
Residents.
I think the
exactly.
community should take pride in it because it is their tax dollars.
Yep.
And I almost see it almost like, you go to different cities and they have the grading on the cleanliness or
the food rating.
Yeah, the food rating on restaurants.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could kind of do the same thing for public facilities. Where does a public facility rate in its resiliency measures? And I think it'd be something good for people to take pride on.
Yeah, I think so too. Because we say we're a leading edge city on resilience, but how does anybody know that?
And you
we
can
flood,
almost
right. So they're like, how are we leading anything?
And you could even see it would be great because people would then be able to see the distinction between older facilities that perhaps haven't been as as tightened up for resiliency versus newer facilities that have very high levels of resiliency measures in them. So I like this. I like the direction you're taking this in, Commissioner Bott. And always very proud of our Office of Resiliency and Sustainability that are always on the cutting edge of all of these issues.
Is October enough time, or do you need November?
I think October would be fine. I'm imagining it like a kind of a very simple template that's a checklists and stars and highlighting things so people can understand it too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, I see we have Larry Schaefer with his hand raised. Welcome, Larry.
Hello, Larry Schaefer, 233 81st Street. I would like to say that this is a great item, and I think that the draft that the sustainability group put together here is wonderful. I'm now looking at trying to help design some green spaces for the West lots, and I'm immediately going to refer to this work. So I think that, this is a great direction. I'd love to incorporate some of these reducing heat island elements, misters, splash parks, think about what we can do. I don't know, but overall, having a consolidated list of resiliency measures and when actively designing green spaces is going to be a help to me. And I think it's going to be a help to others who can follow this with other parks that we're designing. So thank you.
And we'll make sure that my office reaches out to you to have an opportunity to meet with Mr. Rebar from the Parks Department. So with that, Commissioner Bott, anything else with this item?
Nope, that's it.
We can show this item continued.
Thank you.
All right. So the remainder of the items on this agenda, we're going to continue to next month, and those are items number 18, 19, and 20, since we are time limited today. With that, to the members of the committee and the members of the public and staff, thank you for your participation. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.